Hello and welcome to another edition of Here's the Pitch, and it is sponsored, as always, by Masses Restaurants in St. Louis. 5 locations. stlmasses.com is their website. Check that out. If you're driving through St. Louis during the playoffs and you're looking for some good food, I'm your host, Brad, and I'm sure my guest today, Joe Maddon, has gone to Masses Restaurants in his times coming through St. Louis. He loves pasta. Joe Maddon, thank you for joining me. Hello. Good to see you.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I mean, we were just talking about it. I think everybody back there knows I grew up a Cardinal fan. Oh my God, 64 was a magical year, and that's really where that's when really galvanized or cemented within me. And my group was putting a roof on our house over in Hazleton, and a bunch of dudes from Weatherly. They were all Yankee fans, and I was like 10 years old, and I just kept beating them down. And finally, the Cardinals won the World Series, so I won the whole argument.
So we have to talk about that. So how did you become a Cardinal fan? Stan Musial, I think, is everyone's. Was it KMOX because you were in Hazleton? Tell me a little bit about your Cardinal connection.
Yeah, I mean, well, it began weirdly. I'm really disappointed not more love affairs with sports teams should start this way. I was at Yankee Stadium with my dad, White Sox and the Yankees, 1963. And game over, they permitted you to exit on the field. So we exited from the third base side on the field, walked out through center field by the monuments. And I walked out, and then there's all these vendors out there. My dad asked, would you like a hat? Of course I'd like a hat. Which one? And I looked up, and I loved the old blue Cardinal hat with the red STL on it. That was it. That's how I became a Cardinal fan right then and there. And from that moment on, I just started to follow everybody, of course, Stan. But I mean, we're just talking about Mike Shannon. I've got to meet a lot of those guys, McCarver, Gibson, Bill White. I never met Dick Groat, but I never met Kenny Boyer either, but Flood and Brock. I never met Roger Maris, Ray Sadecki. I mean, all these guys that I had met back in the day. God, I was totally enthralled with all of it. I got to know Eddie Spezio. Wanted to meet Phil Gagliano, Jerry Buchek. Never got to meet these guys. But that's how much of a Cardinal fan I was. Bobby Tolan, a rookie.
This is real. When you name Ray Sadecki, let's just say that we know that Larry Jaster, I'm sure, was one of your favorites as well. I
knew Larry from New Mexico. He was coaching out there, and he's the guy that the Dodgers could not beat. Yeah. They could not beat him, and Kurt Flood, Sandy Koufax could not get Kurt Flood out.
Well, I mean, this is, we could talk Cardinals all day, and we might, who knows? But, as a kid growing up, my team was Vince Coleman, Jack Clark, Terry Pendleton, Ozzie Smith. And it's just amazing when we think of those names as Cardinal fans, we think of them as being great. And then you've got the new kids that come up and they go Albert Pujols and Yachty and Wainwright. And it's amazing how, there's not a lot of teams that go through, and you might have 2 or 3 great players along the way, but you have a generation. I have my own generation. My kid, stepson here, has his generation. The Cardinals just seem to figure out a way of, when you're around 120 years, you're going to have that. But just that success and winning and those great players, it's amazing.
Well, I'll tell you why. I mean, the thing I was just talking about them, the Cardinals in the system yesterday, it might have been yesterday or the day before. They do it right. I mean, they teach baseball. And they're going to utilize information, numbers, analytics, but they teach baseball. They'll bring up guys. A couple years ago when Tommy Pham came up. I mean, what is this, 7-year minor league guy? He comes up, he starts kicking your butt. I mean, they have that. They have these guys in waiting. And even like a Rosarena's got to go somewhere else, but he's still a product of the system. They do a great job of teaching the game of baseball. It's George Kissel from back in the day. He was in charge of all that stuff, and Hub Kittle and these guys. That's what I respect most. I mean, you could talk about everything else, but I respect the way they go about teaching the game. It's still baseball there, and to them, they're going to utilize new information and methods, and I'm into it. But by the end of the day, they're teaching baseball players how to play baseball, and that's the secret there. That's the secret sauce. They haven't wavered from that.
We always thought over where I used to work at Fox Midwest for many years. That's how I met you the first time. You probably remember it, but you came through with Tampa. And I remember just having this long conversation. I walk in and there's just music booming from, which I thought was the clubhouse. No, it was your office. It was rock and roll, and I was Rolling Stone. You told me about everything. And I said, man, this guy needs to manage the Cardinals. How do we get him here? So I think there's only one chance. La Russa, leaves in 2011. I thought, all right, they called Joe Maddon. Did they ever sniff around? Did you ever sniff around? Was there ever any chance that you could have It seemed like that would have been the only time, honestly. But was there ever a thought of you guys ever having a marriage, or is it just, Tony was here so long, and then they kind of have this new way of thinking?
There was no sniffing. I never got involved in a sniffing contest. No, when that all broke down, I was with the Rays yet, and I was very happy there. And then all of a sudden, the thing happened at the end of 14 with my contract, because Andrew had left, and I get this window. I had a window, and it was just ripe for the Cubs at that particular moment. Theo made me an offer I couldn't refuse. He played the Godfather role, and that was it. So no, I mean, listen, Cardinals have always been near and dear to my heart, even like Yogi being from there. I mean, I love Yogi too. There's so much there. There's so much, history, baseball history, tradition, things that aren't even spoken about anymore. Things aren't even hardly valued as much anymore. And you guys are just dripping with that stuff there. And that's what I'm saying. I appreciate the fact that it's not being let go. We're not just going to move on to this next progressive thought or idea without really holding on to what got us to this particular point. That's what I appreciate and respect most about the Cardinals.
Yeah, and it's, interesting. We're going to talk about your book a lot here today, The Book of Joe, which is coming out and written with Tom Verducci. And it's fun because it's basically each chapter is sort of a phrase. And I remember you kind of talked about you'd have these little acronyms on your lineup cards. And so now you've put it into book form. Each chapter, we said, it's a phrase, but then you kind of give some input into your life and your teachings and people who have taught you, and you get to talk about the Cubs and everything that. So I got to read a little bit of it. It was great. Tell me the reason for the book at this point right now, and just that format that you used.
Well, the book's been in the making for a long time. I mean, 2008, when we went to the World Series with the Rays, I got a lot of offers at that point. I just wasn't ready to do something. At the conclusion of my time with the Cubs, I ran into Tommy Verducci, and I said, listen, it's about time. I think I can do this now. So we decided on getting together, collaborating on the book. But then here comes the pandemic, which, awful, but it permitted me time. I didn't have that kind of time to really just sit down and dig down deep. So what I did was, for about 3 months, every bit of 3 months, I had a little Sony dictaphone in my pocket and a little microphone up here. I rode my bike every day in Arizona for 3 months in an RV park. I just spoke and talked and talked and talked. I'd send the recording into Tom, and he'd come back at me with direction and insisting that I get deeper in certain subjects or topics. And it kept evolving. And that's how it happened. It was 2020, pandemic, did all the taping, and then Tom just added his magical touch. I mean, the more I read what he has written, you can really see the brilliance of his writing too. So I couldn't be happier first time around doing something like this, that I'm able to work with a gifted guy like him that's able to set direction, along with the publishing company 12, Sean Desmond, and my agent there, David Black. It's been a really interesting and very interesting process.
Yeah, these wordsmiths people like Tom Verducci, they make me angry. I wish I could think like that, like Bob Costas. They always have the right word and the right sentiment, and it just makes like I should be able to think like that. Why can't I think like that?
That's like one of your boys from back there. I think it was Mark Twain that said the difference between the right word and the wrong word is like the difference between lightning and the lightning bug. I've always loved that particular phrase, and it's true. These people, I'm a Pat Conroy guy. I love Pat Conroy. His books were a cut above everybody else's, I thought. Exactly what you're talking about. So I've often said I would have read Pat Conroy's grocery list and have really been interested in it, because some people are just able to use the language better than others.
Well, and I will say, I mean, we used to have some fun with you, because once you went to the Cubs as a Cardinal fan, now we can't really enjoy Joey Maddon anymore. We did, but you always had these. You always had these sort of sage thoughts in the middle of the season, and here's how we would do it here. This is it. We would laugh like, "Oh, Joe's at it again, Mr. Baseball." It was funny because you always talk differently than most managers. You did not just speak in sound bites, and we played well. There was always more to it, so we always have to give you credit.
I understand. I've been doing it for a long time, and that's the thing. I mean, I started in 81, and most of these guys haven't, other than like a Dusty or whatever. And I did everything. I managed in rookie ball. I scouted a territory. I was a minor league coordinator. I ran instructional leagues. I was a hitting coach. I was a pitching coach for a bit. Hitting, base running, and catching were my majors. And then you get to the big leagues, and you kind of like, I defined the way bench coaching was done in the mid 90s. A lot of the stuff that's done now or after that was because nobody gave you a handbook on how to be a bench coach. And analytics, as they are right now, I was doing that off of stat sheets because there was not a baseball operations department that could take data or information off of a statistical sheet and break it down. But that's what I was doing all the time. So when people ask me a question, it's like I'm pontificating. You ask me a question, I'm just going to tell you my experience and why I've arrived at this point, because it's never by the seat of my pants. It's always been well thought out. And I've enjoyed that. That's the part I'm most grateful for. I got my job as a manager when I was 51, 52. So I had all these years in my background, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, well, we loved it when you did it in Tampa. Then you showed up in Chicago. We didn't like it so much. It was funny. And you were with the Angels for so many years. You get to be their manager finally. Seemed like a great homecoming, a couple years there. And then at the middle of this season, pretty early, they say, we're going to change directions. Yeah. And I've read kind of some of the things you said. And we were talking just earlier about the Cardinals and how they sort of mix the analytics. And I even said that you even may have said something, I don't want to misquote you, but players are getting too much information each day. Can you talk about what that means, like each day, what was happening and where that kind of breakdown happened?
Well, I just, in general, I mean, was not just in Anaheim. I think in every particular major league city, if you would press people, they would actually agree with, a lot of them do because I've been getting texts and phone calls and stuff. You could only hold on to so many nuggets going into and during the hot moment of a major league game. And you need nuggets. You just need a couple nuggets. Not even a handful, maybe two or three, something that gets you back on track, something that permits you to focus when things get into a difficult moment, they get you back here. The analytics, again, to me, the primary purpose of analytics should be to acquire people. I.e., that's why the Dodgers are so good. Andrew's got a great process, and they're really good, not because their analytics are better during the game, it's because their players are better during the game. Who they got in the first place are better during the game. And that's never really spoken about enough. After that, analytics shines on defense, and it will always shine on defense. I'm curious, like with the new rule that's put in place with the you can't shift anymore, there's still going to be ways to get guys closer to where the balls hit the hardest, second baseman and shortstop and the corner guys, to still grab some line drives. And for me, that was always about weak catch line drives. That was my motto with the Rays. And that's what that kind of analytical defense was about. You have to be where the ball is going to be hit the hardest, because when the ball is hit softly, you become a bigger defense. Next is pitching. Pitchers do get some good intel out of all this stuff. But again, you could only hold on to so much during the game. The catchers with their little wristbands, and they're always flapping them back and forth. And I believe in that too. I do. Because there's nothing worse than when you choose the wrong pitch in the wrong situation, and you all knew this is not the right thing to do, but people forget. For that perspective, I was appreciative of that. But the hitters don't get anything, quite frankly. Hitters get very little, if nothing, out of all of this. So backing it up, I love analytics numbers. If I'm going to acquire you in the offseason, it's between you and another young shortstop. I need to really break this down a little bit more finite detail. But after that, give me a nugget for the defense. Yeah, go ahead, kill yourself. Defenses aren't going to be wrong. That's where the large sample size is not going to be deceptive. But other than that, I like trends, because people change during the course of the season. When it comes to pitchers and hitters, things change. And I've been after them for a while to give me a trend matrix, not just this overarching matrix. And they'll say, well, trends are built into it. That's not good enough. That's where experience does pay off. That's where 20-some years, 30 years, 40 years in the game, watching things matters. And so I want analytics to be separate and away from clubhouses and dugouts. I want them there, but I want coaches to be empowered again. And I know you will find, I think you're going to get a better product. And I want the empowerment of coaches, because these are the guys that have earned the right to be there. Other people have not earned the right to be in a major league clubhouse. And I absolutely firmly believe that.
Yeah, I mean, we hear that the office comes down with the lineup, hands it to the manager. I don't know how many teams are doing that. How many teams do you think do that? And it doesn't seem right? I mean, no, it doesn't. Then why hire a manager? That's what I'm saying. Then you should do it yourself. You put a manager in a really precarious position, because he has to answer all the questions when things don't go well. And a lot of it is being given to him.
And actually, there's some managers I think that want it to be given to them too, because they haven't had the base to develop a thought or an idea. This is how I'd like to do things. They haven't had the opportunity to fail on a minor league level to do those kind of things. But I think it's more than you know. And a lot of times there'll be a denial that, no, this is not happening here. And we let these guys do these things on their own. But conversationally, it's always one where front offices or people in the analytical department will try to convince you this is the right way to do it. So even your independent thought is kind of like steamrolled by this groupthink, executalk, which I call it. It's just it needs to be separated. Get us the players, give us the information, and they'll let us do our job. It's no different than separation of power in government. There needs to be a separation of power, I think, to have this all run properly.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, as you're talking, it reminds me that you and Andrew in Tampa sort of kind of created this model to work together, but no one really is following the model. They're doing their own model, and now it's completely out of whack, right? I mean, it seems like, what was the differences between what you're doing in Tampa, and then what's happening now?
Well, primarily in Tampa, there was a lot of interaction and collaboration, but there wasn't dugout interference. There wasn't, the analytical department wasn't presenting to the players. It was the coaches that still were in charge of the clubhouse and the players. It's gotten to the point now where they're skipping the middle guy, which would be the coach, and they're going right to it themselves. And quite frankly, the analytical people will get defended more easily than the coach will when something breaks down. And there's just all this disconnect. There doesn't need to be all this analytical interference in the game, and people believe it's the reason why some teams are successful or not. If that were the case, with all due respect, the Pirates, the Tigers this year, they'll have great analytical departments. It has nothing to do with it. It's about the players and how you acquire players in the first place. So that's where I don't think enough conversation is spent on that. I know people are in rebuild, which is another thing that I'm really not into. The fact that you could take a 3 or 4 year period, kind of a grace period to get things together, and there's no accountability for winning and losing. And what does that mean to the fans? I mean, there's all of these different things to be discussed that I think get lost in the shuffle somehow.
Yeah. No, and as a fan, we kind of, we take what we hear, and it's seemingly, because you hire a manager to manage the team. We think of, again, Whitey Herzog, Red Schoendienst. I can't see Whitey having somebody come down and say, Whitey, you know what, you need to move Ozzy to the 8th spot tonight. Get out of here. It's like Whitey had his own, it was up here, right? So it's weird.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to believe we're going to slowly start getting, I think maybe, I don't know exactly when, but I'd love to see the trend go back in that direction. And again, if you just want a middle manager in the dugout, if that's your desire, and you want more control, then just say it. Just say it, and don't run or hide from the post game or the questions that need to be answered when things break down. I mean, if they've broken down and there's this heavy influence coming from up top, and the manager's really at the mercy of the direction that he's getting, somebody needs to say it. And also on that subject, if I'm the manager, I'm going to give the front office a lot of credit because things are going well too under the same set of circumstances.
So I assume it's been weird to be off during the summer, but kind of nice. I see golfing and grilling, a lot of G's. But we have the postseason coming up. I don't know if there's any TV work in your background or coming up, but there should be. But I want to think about 2023 for you. Are you interested in getting back in the dugout right away? What's your thoughts as you look forward? First of all, are you doing any postseason work? And then are you looking at anything that, it's gonna be a lot of openings as always, so it's gonna have to be the right fit, I'd assume. I don't think you're gonna go somewhere. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, the postseason stuff, I'm going to do a podcast with Tom Verducci on iHeartRadio. We just got the groundwork for that laid down. I think it's going to be twice a week, and that's coming up starting next week, starting Monday. I think we're going to tape the gig on Monday. And then Sirius Radio, I'm going to do something tomorrow, I think in the afternoon with Brad Lidge. And I'm not quite, and I think CJ Nitkowski. So I might be doing different things with them during the playoffs. That's as deep as I wanted to go. I don't mind, and I'm interested. I need to talk because when you sit around all summer, and I've been playing a ton of golf, and I have been gardening, and I have been grilling, I've been having a blast. But if I'm going to get back into the fray, I need to keep my the conversation going. I need to keep my thoughts rolling. So that's the selfish intent right there. But I'm looking forward to the new challenge. So that's primarily it. And then with the teams itself, like you mentioned, I'm just curious. Yes, I'm interested, but I'm also interested, who may be interested in return, right? I know I'm saying a lot of things right now, but I'm just trying to defend the game. I'm not indicting any individual whatsoever. It's just the game itself, and it's been out there that a lot of people are concerned about the method or the process of the game right now. And I'm just telling you from my perspective regarding people. The people in Anaheim, Perry, really dig Perry, Theo, me and Theo tight. It's not the point. The point is implementation and the imposition of the information, whereas real baseball people don't have a chance to do their jobs, and real baseball people aren't even getting jobs. Part of it I'd like to see is a greater influx of former coaches, really good coaches, back into your minor league systems, imparting the game on the next layer or level of coaches. Nobody's coaching the coaches anymore. I was coached as a coach really well. Mentioned Bob Clear a lot. You talk about George Kissel right there. You ask anybody, they almost genuflect when you mention his name, or Hub Kittle. They genuflect. But that's how the game was passed down. That's a big reason why the Cardinals have been able to secure annually, decadely, whatever, the same kind of a game, because it's been passed. And there's an accountability to the way the game's played. I don't think that enough organizations are looking at it that way.
Yeah. And luckily for the Cardinals, Jose Oquendo still does it. They keep him, he roves, and it's like he is becoming that. I mean, silently, no one says it, but he's becoming that George Kissel figure. And what's great about him, bilingual. I mean, it's just a perfect guy. So we hope that we see you in the dugout soon. It's fun having you in the dugout. This book, The Book of Joe, I can't leave without asking about the 2016 Cubs. I oddly enjoyed the 2016 Cubs. I loved Wrigley. I hate the song at the end of the game, but I really enjoyed the team, and it made me realize it's all about what team do I enjoy. The 2016 Cardinals weren't as fun. I remember being there in 2015 for work as a Cardinal employee or a Fox Sports employee. Home run over the right field scoreboard. Who hit that? The lefty, Schwarber. Yeah, off Segrist. And I said, well, this is what it sounds like when a window is closing and another window opens. So it was weird for me to watch you guys win because I was so conflicted. I enjoyed watching your games. How much fun? I mean, can you look back now and savor it, or does it take you to be retired to say, I'm going to take the time to enjoy that? You guys are going to have a 10-year reunion here in a couple years, and that's when it seems like it's kind of that nostalgic feeling. How do you look back at that year now, being away from the Cubs as 3-4 years now, and just kind of maybe drinking a nice red wine and thinking about that whole time?
I don't get into it too deeply. I mean, I do think about it, but it's not a deep reflection right yet, like you just suggested. I think it's going to happen over time. But that group was very talented. Obviously, it was very young. It was very charismatic. I think a lot of what you enjoyed were the personalities that we put out there every day. We were interesting. We were an interesting group. We were a loose group. There was not a tight butt in that whole team. We went out and we played. We did hard, tried to play it right. And I think that separated us from others at times. There was no fear. I like fearless groups. And a big part of being fearless is you're not really concerned about answering the questions afterwards when things don't go well. And that to me is, those are the guys I'm looking for. I'm looking for fearless coaches, fearless players. That's how you win, because if you're always out there concerned about making a mistake or not winning, you can never be afraid of losing. And I think that's really what it comes down to. If you're afraid of losing, you're going to lose. If losing this is just another game, let's move it on, you're going to be just fine. So these are the things that I think really stood out about that team. Charismatic, young, lots of fun. Believe me, it was a lot of fun. And we were very tightly knit. It's hard to duplicate the 108 years since the last one before that one. I hate to think that's going to be another 108 years, but man, it was. I was very fortunate to be part of it.
I'd be okay with that, by the way, if it goes another 108. But I was curious because that was, you have a team and you want to win a World Series, and now you're in the, Game 7 and we're managing, and then you have this burden of this GOAT and just people and Bartman and all these things. Kind of, and Theo had experienced it with the Red Sox, so he knew, but wasn't in the dugout. Where does that come in? When you think about just the heaviness of that if we don't win this game tonight in Cleveland, who knows if we'll be back here? Or is it too hard to even think like that when you're in the moment?
It is. I never even thought that, quite frankly. I remember sitting in the hotel room writing my lineup down, and I had my dad's hat with me. I carry my dad's hat with me. I put my dad's hat right on my lap as I was writing the lineup down for that day. And I was never focused on what if this doesn't happen? What's the next opportunity? I never even thought about that. I'm pretty good about staying with whatever the process may be at that time. What's the goal right here? Short term, what can I do? So that whether it's writing your lineup or prepping for the game before and then playing it and then afterwards. So I was never a consideration to lose. So yeah, that was it. Me and my dad sitting in that hotel room, writing the lineup down, and I was anticipating good.
I love that you addressed all of this in the book, but the Chapman decision, and just it's one of those again where you've been asked about it probably a million times, but you put it in the book. You just said, listen, you go with what you think you can do. Things go well. You get a little rain delay. You get Jason Hayward to give a speech, and then we're popping champagne. It's crazy.
And the rest is history. It's a better story that way, isn't it? I mean, everybody after that, best World Series I've ever seen, best Game 7 I've ever witnessed, and you get to be able to participate in it. How lucky are you?
Who was your favorite celebrity? Did you get to hang out with Bill Murray a lot? Eddie Vedder? I have to thank the Cubs and you. I got to meet Eddie Vedder, a big Pearl Jam fan. It was interesting to even have I had a conversation with Eddie Vedder because of you and your team. So I want to thank you for that. Bob Odenkirk, Jeff Garland. Jeff Garland's going to be a guest on the show. We're going to talk Cubs, but and it was Bill Murray the coolest guy. I mean, did you savor any of that stuff, or does that just sort of part?
Oh yeah. Bill showed up at my event. Right, I'm on my golf course here in Pennsylvania. He showed up at an event right around Christmas one year, and he was hanging out with my mom. Bill did that. Just drove over from New York City, about a 2-hour ride in a pouring rain.
Now wait a minute. So he doesn't show up to movies that he's supposed to be working on, yet you get him to show up to your golf. I guess it's easier if you say just play golf, right? I mean.
How about it? I mean, I'm looking forward to the next time I do play golf. I've been around Joel a little bit, but Bill has been fabulous to me and my family. And Eddie and I stay in touch. Eddie and I think we've known each other since I've been with the Cubs, or began with the Cubs, but I feel like I've known him forever, and I think he feels the same way. Our conversations are so normal and interesting. And he goes, even when he writes you a text, it's almost like lyrical. The guy just can't help himself. So Eddie, absolutely. And, John Cusack was there. John was a big supporter also. And you mentioned Jeff Garland, really, really cool guy. I like Jeff a lot. And he stayed in touch also. And the list goes on, man. It's a wild ride. I mean, I even had Joe Namath to show up there the next season. Joe and I become friends, not because of that, but that's just an ancillary benefit to the whole thing. All these guys, what's her name? Elizabeth Moss, a big fan. I met her in New York City. It's been really a cool thing with all of these people showing up, and they are, trust me, Belushi, they're real Cub fans. It's not at all fabricated. These guys are into it, man.
What's your favorite 3 concerts of all time? Can you name 3 right off the top if I give you an easy softball like that, or?
Well, it's hard. I grew up a Springsteen fan. Lafayette College Alumni Gym. Can't remember what year it was. It's about as big as my room right here. That's when he was just starting out. Greetings from Asbury Park was coming out. More recently, I got to see Eddie. I got to see Pearl Jam for the first time. I've only seen Eddie, but this beginning of the season, I saw Eddie in Oakland. God, I just maybe because I know, but they were so good. I love that concert also. I know it's the other one I was going to tell you about. Pearl Jam, Eddie,
Bob Dylan. No, let's go.
No, there was one other one. I had it in the head. I got my job with the Angels, with the Rays in 2005. I had been a coach. So the Stones played at Anaheim Stadium in 2005 in October, November. So I get to go there as a newly appointed manager of the Devil Rays and got to see all my guys there and saw Jagger and the boys there on the field at Anaheim. So the Stones, Eddie and Bruce.
I believe James Dean is lurking behind you. What is the I always have to look around behind.
Yeah.
I have to look around. So what's going on there?
This is, he's that side and Maryland's over here.
Oh.
Yeah, she's over there. That's just with the wider lens. I've had them up for several years. My sister gave them to me as like a Christmas decoration. So when people there's all windows here. People drive around and they see James Dean in your living room or in your sunroom. So I just never have taken him down, and he really enjoys these conversations.
What's that thing right over your shoulder? It's got a circle. It looks like you'd put your finger on it and actually.
Right? How about it? I wish I could get that hooked up. And my Salinas Angels 78, that was the last year I played there. Love Salinas, California.
Well, I mean, this is fun. And again, the Book of Joe, it's just stories that you've been told. And it's baseball fans love baseball books. This is perfect for the off season or Christmas or gifts. I got a copy, started reading it, didn't put it down. I scrolled through as I do on a phone. I really appreciate the time. Yeah. So what do you got going on around the house? It's just a lot of golf, grilling, and it's got to be weird, right?
If I could show you, I'm looking at the 8th green right there. The 9th tee box is right there. The first fairway is right there. The 2nd green's over there, and this 3rd tee box is right there. That's been almost every day since I got back on July 1st. And not only that, it's in a beautiful valley. It's called the Cunningham Valley. It's magnificent. I paid big bucks to go to Austria and Germany and the Czech Republic and all over Europe to see the same thing I get to see here. And right now the leaves are turning colors. It's one of the prettiest places on earth, and I get to live here. So feel great about that. Tonight's girls' night out for my wife, Jason. I'm going to go over to the club here. Frankie's hired a new chef at the Valley Country Club, so I get to go over there and test his fares. I cannot be more pleased or happy with what I got going on right now.
Lastly, I have to ask, I mean, I don't know how to ask this because I want to know, who do you like in the World Series? Who do you like here in 2022? Or can you be a fan now and root for Andrew and the Dodgers? Or that's what I'm trying to understand. Is like, are you rooting? Or do you just sort of, I'm just baseball, I like watching. Tell me how you're going to watch baseball in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, if and when I do watch it, it'll just be watching baseball. I don't have a rooting interest right now. I like that Buck has done with the Mets. Buck and I become friends, so I'm interested. With all of that. Snit down in Atlanta, what he's done down there, I'm really pleased for his success because we kind of parallel how we got to this certain juncture in our lives. So I'm digging on that. But on the American League side, Dusty is a favorite to I'm going with all the old guys, right? But Dusty and Booney and I are good friends. So I think it's going to come down to those two teams on that side. On the other side, it's going to be the Dodgers versus I don't even know who. I think the Mets are going to be tough because of their pitching, their starting pitching, although other teams have good pitching, but they're 4 guys that they step up, they can be very difficult. But I like Yankees, Astros, that's really stepping out there. Dodgers, and I just don't know the other side. But again, my rooting interest is baseball. I want baseball to be known as a national pastime again. I want kids to really get back into our game. I want real baseball being played. The liberal arts version where you have to, Aaron Judge, you cannot help but love Aaron Judge. This guy plays the entire game of baseball. And of course, he's known for his home runs right now. He just almost won the Triple Crown. I don't even know if he still has a shot. He got a great arm. He runs the bases right. That's what I like to see.
I try to say last question and then mean it, but you mentioned Judge, and then everyone wants to go to the MVP race, and I forgot that I wanted to ask you what it was like just to be around Shohei, and then Trout, of course. What was it like to manage Shohei? How hard or difficult, or was it simple because every 5th day he pitches and every other day he's hitting home runs and being the best player in baseball?
Every 6th day. He would pitch every 6th day. Right. Okay. What it was this. Last year, we set up the policy, the method. The night before any game, whether he's going to play the next day, hit, or pitch, we would talk about what do you want to do the next day. So the day that he would pitch, do you want to hit on that day also, or do you just want to pitch? After you've pitched, the next day, do you want to play? I would ask after the game, I'd ask him and Ipe's interpreter, how do you feel about tomorrow? Do you want to play or do you need a day? So we talked before every game, the night before every game, and the decision was his. Leading into that method, talked to him about that before we took that leap of faith. Because everybody looks at it now like it was, hey, it's like common, it's an easy decision. But we agonized over in spring training when to let him hit and pitch in the same game, even in a spring training game. And then it became old hat. So once we established that method, it became real easy because there's nothing difficult about it at all. It was just a conversation every day. And he related to me, if his legs felt fatigued at all, that's when he thought he might want to back off. But my God, he wants to run all the time. The guy wanted to steal bases. The day he pitches, he throws 95 pitches, ran the bases 3 times. The next day he wants to get on and go. He's different. He's just different. Beautiful man. And he's got as great a feel for the game as anybody I've ever managed.
Yeah, it's so fun watching him. The Book of Joe is the book. I've talked about it, but I didn't give you a chance to plug. Is there anything that you need to tell us about the book that maybe I didn't pull out of you?
Well, no, the book was, the intent was, there's a couple intents in there. One was to try to compare and contrast managing in the 1980s to present time. You already mentioned Whitey, Gene Mock, Billy Martin, all those guys, Weaver. So that's a part of it. And the other part would be that hopefully it appeals to a wider audience than just baseball. You know, companies, teachers, CEOs, people like that may find some of these little axioms, don't permit the pressure to exceed the pleasure. Those kind of things, embrace the target. And of course, it's just try not to suck, do simple, better. I mean, how this applies, the 5 levels of being a professional, that's all in there. But I think there's application outside of the game itself. And that was the reason why I wanted to wait. I didn't want it just to be a typical baseball book. It had to include more, or else I would not have been satisfied.
Again, it's great. I'm sure you can get it everywhere books are sold, out Kindle and iPhone, Apple, everywhere. So I'm sure everybody can get it.
Exactly.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate your time, and hopefully you're back in 2023, not in the NL Central, but then we'd get to see you more. So maybe some more magic, some circus animals, all the fun that you bring, and I'm sure a team will be very lucky to have you, and we hope you're back in 2023.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the mention of the book, and I appreciate some really outstanding questions, and I appreciate that too.
All right. We thank Joe Maddon, and this is Here's the Pitch. We thank you for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.